Today I shall be talking on John Lilly's Eupheus, the Anatomy of Wit, which was published in 1878. John Lilly, one very well-known personality in English literature, was born in 1554. He had a small life. He died in 1606. He was definitely a wonderful personality, a writer of a different kind of comedies, different from the kind of comedies that Shakespeare or Ben Jonson wrote. And well, some of his more well-known comedies are Sappho and Phao, written in 1583-84, Midas in 1589, The Woman in the Moon in 1595, and definitely the most famous, the most important of all his comedies, Endymion, which was published in 1588. His prose romance, in fact, that is our subject of talk today. His prose romance, Eupheus, the Anatomy of Wit, as I said, published in 1578, and he also wrote a sequel to it, which was Eupheus and his England. These are his two prose romances. Now, a romance, or rather romances, were generally written in verse, but Lilly decided to write a prose romance of a different character and quality. And his prose romance, we shall be coming to that, had certain distinctive qualities. A romance predominantly focuses on two things, or in other words, a romance has two distinctive features, which are one, adventure, and the second one is love. But the prose romance of Lilly, as I said, is of a different kind. And well, we do not know whether Lilly's prose romances can be called romance proper. We shall be dividing our lecture in a few small parts. Now, first, let me tell you the outlines of the story of Lilly's Eupheus, the Anatomy of Wit. Eupheus is an Athenian youth. He is a learned, scholarly man, and he visits Naples. Well, his intention is to live a life of pleasure. There he becomes friendly or intimate with an Italian young man, and the young man's name is Philaeus, Philautus, Philatius. Well, I give the spelling because we don't know exactly what the pronunciation will be, but let us pronounce the name as Philatius. Philatius introduces, well, this Eupheus to his fiancée, Lucilla, who became attracted towards Eupheus. The two friends naturally exchange taunting letters. In other words, the relationship between the two friends became bitter because of the girl. But finally, Lucilla leaves Eupheus also, and she elopes with another young man. Eupheus is broken-hearted, but the two young men become friends again. So this is the brief outline of the story. Now, the question is, what is the function of wheat here? Why is it said that anatomy, why the second part of the prose romance is the anatomy of wheat? What does Lily exactly mean by wheat? That will be our discussion, the subject of discussion now. So, as I said, what Lily exactly means by wheat. Now, this question may rise to the mind, rise in the mind of any reader. Now, in fact, the meaning of the word wheat in our times, in the English dictionary, and the meaning in which wheat was used by Lily are different. What you understand by wheat today was not exactly what Lily meant by wheat in his time or in his book. Now, what do we mean by wheat now? What's the meaning of wheat? There are so many meanings, but by wheat we may suggest inventive thought. What is wheat? Wheat is inventive thought. What is wheat? Wheat is quick understanding. So these are the two meanings that the word wheat suggests today. But in Lily's time, it was different, especially in Lily's work. Wheat means intellectual ability of eloquence. So in Lily's book, Eupheus, The Anatomy of Wheat, wheat suggests ability of eloquence, which is definitely an intellectual ability. And we must remember another very important thing, that wheat, the word wheat, comes from the Anglo-Saxon word witan, W-I-T-A-N, witan, which means to know. So we'll see the difference. So it has in Anglo-Saxon, witan had a broader meaning. Witan, from there we have the modern word wheat, but witan suggested, well, something else, to know. Now, the idea of wheat as given by Lily in English literature for the first time is definitely significant, very significant. For the first time in Eupheus, The Anatomy of Wheat, Lily gave a new meaning to the word wheat. And what is Lily's meaning? That I shall be discussing right now. Well, we can discuss this in certain points. So, point number one, what is wheat? Wheat means, well, paradoxical parallelisms. That is what Lily means. Once again, what is wheat? Paradoxical parallelisms. Number two, what is wheat? Antithesis. Number three, extensive use of alliteration. And number four, analogies from classical and proverbial sources. Once again, we may repeat: paradoxical parallelism, antithesis, extensive use of alliteration, and analogies from classical and practical sources. Now, wheat is a natural quality, is it? Now, Lily perhaps suggests that wheat may be a natural quality, but wheat actually should be shaped. If wheat is not shaped, it may be misused. That is what Lily suggests. Wheat is a virtue. If you are a witty man, you are endowed with a virtue. So wheat is a virtue, but this virtue may be misused if it is not properly shaped. So in the first part, Eupheus is shown as a young man of quick wit. He's a man who has quick wit, but the young man lacks wisdom. So, wit without wisdom may be malicious. That is what Lily means, perhaps. Natural wheat is morally indifferent. But if wisdom does not shape it properly, it will be potentially dangerous. You may be a very witty person, but if you do not have moral wisdom, then you may do something which would harm the human race, which may harm your friends and associates and others. So, well, what does Lily do? Well, what is wheat? So, wheat is something which is associated with a playful practice. So, playfully you can use a wheat. But if you playfully use a wheat, this can result in youthful folly. So, what does Lily do? Does he suggest playful use of wheat, or does he rather criticize youthful folly because of the playful use of wheat? What does he do? What does he suggest? He doesn't suggest either. So, well, we shall have to understand, or we shall have to come to a conclusion. We shall have to make our analysis ourselves. Eupheus has two distinct aspects. What are they? First, Eupheus, the anatomy of wheat, is a narrative. It is a narrative. And second, it has a moralizing character. A narrative, it is a story. A story is narrated to us. But, well, inside this story, there is definitely a moralizing aspect. So, two parts of Lilly's work we can point out. Now, well, what is the utility? What was the utility of such a work? We have to remember that Lilly was not writing out his Eupheus for us, the modern readers. To a modern reader, this may seem to be rather tedious, but to the Elizabethan reader, it was definitely a palatable thing. The Elizabethan readers enjoyed such things, and they did not at all think the narrative to be tedious. Now, there is another aspect of the work. So, what is that? Lilly invents a story which is potentially interesting. So, look at the story. Two gentlemen and one young girl, and the resultant jealousy, envy, and finally breaking up of friendship. So the girl becomes the cause of the breaking up of friendship between two young men who otherwise were very friendly with each other. Now, the three characters, look at the three characters that Lilly has presented. The man, that is Eupheus, he is a witty young man, and he has learning, he is a scholarly young man, but he doesn't have any money. He has no money. Who is the other young man? The other young man, that is Philaetius. He has no scholarly excellence, but perhaps he is a dull lover. So a lover doesn't need to be a scholarly person. Well, it's meaningless to suggest that a lover has to be scholarly, a learned person to win the love of a lady. No. But perhaps he is a dull lover. Or why did Lucilla suddenly withdraw her love from Philaetius and offered it to Eupheus? No, well, it's not true. It's not true. Perhaps he was not a dull person. Then, well, Lucilla was perhaps a coquette. She was perhaps never faithful. She was not faithful to anybody, and therefore she cheated both the young men. Both the young men were cheated by Lucilla, and she had her physical beauty. Definitely she was an attractive girl, an attractive lady, and she makes use of her physical beauty and she played with both the young men. Finally, she eloped with a stranger. This means that she did not have any feeling for either of them. Well, perhaps she was a heartless girl. Now, the thing is, this could be a very interesting story of triangular love, or rather, a very interesting psychological story. So, a study of the psychology of a girl, Lucilla. Now, well, why should we blame Lucilla? Maybe that both Eupheus and Philatius were, well, not suitable for love. As lovers, perhaps both of them were worthless. That is a possibility. And well, those story could have been developed along this line. Now, well, the psychology of a girl is a very difficult thing. Well, in fact, psychology of any human being is a difficult thing to understand. But, well, that was not done by Lily. So it is said that, critics have said that Lily invented a long story, but he could not introduce any action into his story. So the story without action fails, at least for us, the modern readers, it fails. Now, the narrative, therefore, had the potential to be an interesting narrative, but it fails because it doesn't have any action. Now, well, there may be another reading. There may be another reading of another kind of reading of Eupheus, that studying Eupheus from a linguistic point of view. Well, linguistically, how Lily could present his Eupheus, the anatomy of wit. But for the present purpose, we shall not make any linguistic analysis of Eupheus's, linguistic analysis of Lily's Eupheus. But I may perhaps read a few lines very slowly. I shall read so that you can follow them. So I am reading from Eupheus, and look at the style. It is virtue of gentlemen that maketh gentlemen, that maketh the poor rich rich, the base born noble, the deformed beautiful, the sick whole. Now, well, you can understand, it is almost Baconian. The style is almost Baconian style, and this was how the entire piece was written. As I said, that there are paradoxical parallelisms and alliterations, analogies, and perhaps we shall have to end our discussion with a remark that Eupheus, the anatomy of wit, does not have any special interest for a modern reader. It will remain only as a textbook which can be studied in a classroom and nowhere else. Thus for today, thank you. Thank you very much.